Hello, I'm Miranda, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Tyranid Invasion, White Dwarf issue number 495. So the theme of this month's issue is all about the Tyranids. There is lore history, there's biological history on them. Anything you want to know about Tyranids, it's probably not all in here, but there is a lot of information. We start off with a letter from the editor, hi Lyle, and he describes exactly that this issue is all about Tyranids. There's a fun submission this year, a diorama from Sam Davies, a Yuletide at Bugmansson's is what it's called, and it's absolutely well done, totally custom built, everything done. There's actually another segment in here about dioramas, which is awesome, I think. Next up is a lore piece called The Worlds of Warhammer. Leah Appleton talks a little bit about the naming conventions given to the different factions, like the Stormcast Eternals and how their names are based kind of on deeds and things they do, and the Seraphon, how their names are kind of based on their language. And it's kind of interesting from a lore building standpoint, or even if you build RPGs, because it's one of those types of things that you would think about when considering a people's or a language, like what the names would be reflective of that and how those names, are derived. Of course, they talk about the Oryx and how their names are based on violent things that they do, like Haka and Smasha, whereas the Gloomspite Gits are, more gross and mushroom related. Tons of cool little explanations in here of how the names work, plus examples. So it's a really cool lore piece for some Age of Sigmar lore, I should say. Alright, for the access granted, there is an update on the Slidecrown Sundering. So last issue, 494, was about preserving or draining the lakes. That was the next mission after burning the forests. Well, now we're on to mission 3, which is to seize the crown. Now the group over at the Warhammer bunker area had a lot of wins for the obliteration team, so now the Wither Vein is ticked over to the obliteration side, so we don't know where this is going to end when it comes to taking the crown. I guess we'll know in next issue when they actually conclude the actual campaign. Which reminds me, are you participating in the Slidecrown Sundering? Do you follow these events? This is all more Age of Sigmar based, so I didn't know how many of you really played that game versus 40k. Just let me know in the comments if you can. Of course, one of the fun things about the Slidecrown Sundering campaign is because it is a narrative in nature, there's people who submit stories, and there's some really fun, creative, kind of random looking ones. Like one of them follows this character who I guess is participating in the battle, but his story is not at all about that. It's just him collecting feathers from everywhere because he's trying to turn himself into a bird. And you're like, what is going on in this world? It's excellent. And I'm just gonna interrupt myself real quick to say, if you are enjoying this content and you like this kind of video, please let me know by liking it. And if you aren't already, you are welcome to subscribe to my channel. I will always take all of the subscribers I can get. But I would also like to know, what is your favorite article in White Dwarf, or do you read White Dwarf? Definitely let me know in the comments. Okay, back to the review. Also, the bunker challenge for this month, for the month of December, is Gods of War. So big models to paint. And there's a new 40k mission this month called Defense Nexus. It's a fairly standardized game, although I will say the deployment zone is a little bit odd, but it has a special end game objective. So you play your game as normal, objectives and all that sort of thing, but whenever you end the game, they tally up the units with the most OC, all cumulative, within 6 inches of the center of the board to gain 25 victory points. And a new Age of Sigmar battle plan called Buried in the Fog. This was a fun one. There is a new set of Killteam rules. Well, sort of. There's new cards that help elevate your Killteam game called Jungle Warfare. So a lot of Catachan love in this one. There's 6 different cards that come in the magazine, but you can also just roll on a table for different conditions if you're playing on a jungle-themed board. So you can have Catachan Brainleaf or Spikers or Hidden Traps, just all these crazy conditions that will affect you or your opponent, or maybe only one person because the other person is a Catachan unit and is already used to all of these things. So kind of a fun way to add some variety to your Killteam games. I think this can be used in conjunction with the Deception cards that they've been adding over the last few months, but basically just a lot of things they're adding to give a lot of variety to the game. Alright, and on to one of my favorite articles, Basic Training. Jimbo Worth talks this month about charging and the value of charging, not just for the purpose of murdering your enemy, because of course that's what we all think of when we're charging for the enemy, but also about positioning yourself so that you are strategically handling your objectives, getting closer to objectives, using your OC to your benefit, making sure that your charges don't keep you out of range of objectives, and how to think of charging in that way, even if you aren't charging to necessarily kill the way you would want to. Sometimes you have to play the OC game, and this shows you some examples of doing that. And in fact, the Orders Sir portion, where they provide you with a problem and ask you to solve it, is exactly that, about taking an objective away from an enemy unit and how to think of that. And the Hobby Hangout article this month talks about Zenithal painting, both from a dark at the bottom, light at the top, overhead, and also the inverse of that, and how painting those models, how those models are affected by the Zenithal pattern of light to dark, even though you're putting the same color on them. So on one of them they give you a Fleshhound, which is kind of dark at the top because of his fins, quills, whatever they are. Because they're dark, they should be dark at the top, and because of the red skin that he has, they had a lighter underbrushing of the whiter color, and it made the red kind of glow really well. And then conversely, they had a Space Marine Infiltrator that's light at the top of the head and then dark as you get down toward his feet, and you can see how that leads into shading, natural shading on the model, and they combine this a lot with using contrast paints. It seems to be a very good combination. So I don't know if you're already doing that, but this seems to be what this article suggests doing. Further into the magazine, and building on the whole lore world building portion of it, there's a cool article called Upon Magic's Civilized and Wild. And it's an Age of Sigmar themed article, of course, but it talks about the nature of magic as used by the different factions in Warhammer. And of course, magic in this world is innate in everything, but your manifestation, or the way people who are attuned to it, harness them differently. Some take a more scholarly, very clinical approach to it, whereas like the Orcs have no idea what they're doing, but they definitely harness magic because that is just so innate to them. And again, it's more of that lore building. If you're building worlds, this is exactly how you do it. And once again, for you Warcry fans, there is an article in here called Heroes of Civilization, where they give you new rules for the cities of Sigmar, specifically rules for the Dawnbringers. And the Dawnbringers were actually talked about in last month's issue, where they are basically the Vanguard force that goes out and actually stakes claim to land and creates civilizations from that. So all of the cities of Sigmar started from Dawnbringers. So you can now have a Dawnbringer warband, and this article includes rules for being able to play them. Next up, we've got the Tale of Four Warlords. The challenge for December is to paint up a combat patrol that can ally with your current force, or paint a completely different, unrelated combat patrol army. So our warlords have chosen some Chaos Space Marines, some Loyalist Space Marines, the Ingeniators. I don't know who plays those, but they're really cool looking. Some Traitor Guard, boo. And finally, some Adeptus Mechanicus to ally with the Loyalist Imperial Guard. This month's issue also features a new boarding actions mission. So if you're playing boarding actions, this is a cool one where you have these defense systems active. So it's like the Space Hulk has a alarm that has essentially gone off, and there's different threat levels that make the game more and more hostile the longer you go. So kind of a fun little spin on an already dangerous game. All right, the next several pages goes over the Fourth Tyrannic War, which is what is happening right now in 40k. So the Fourth Tyrannic War is here, and that is Hive Fleet Leviathan. And it has punctured its way into several areas of the solar segmentum and is wreaking havoc on the Imperium. Now, Lord Solar Leontis is one of the forefront planners and has helped to stem a lot of the damage that's being caused by the Tyranid invasion and has saved some planets through his smart planning and handling of supply lines. But there's a lot of concern about, these forces are very overwhelming. It seems like Hive Fleet Leviathan is untiring as a foe. They just can't seem to hack enough of them away. And this article gives you a ton of details of what all is happening. It follows the Castale system, the Pyremote system, and the Formidire system, and shows you the different planets and what's happening on each of them. Some of them are completely lost, some of them are doing okay. Everyone's just kind of holding out right now, because these Tyranids are, it's a problem. And to make matters feel even more dire, there is a map of the galaxy here showing all of the areas that Hive Fleet Leviathan have invaded. But not just Hive Fleet Leviathan, you've got Hive Fleet Behemoth, Kraken, Tiamat, Jormungandr, Moloch, and Kronos. They're coming from everywhere. I mean, this is very stressful for the Imperium. So then we take a break to kind of look back on the history of the Tyranids, going back to 1987 with the first model that looks like something straight out of Eraserhead, and going on to all of the different models that the range has developed into. And needless to say, it's gone from, kind of amorphous, they didn't really know what they were doing, even though they did have rules set early on about how the Tyranids were always going to be designed. There's this rule of 6 where they always have 6 limbs. There's rules about their heat sinking abilities, the idea that the Tyranids always come out fully formed. So biomass, of course, is created to develop whatever that Tyranid's going to be, and based on the needs of the hive, it'll say, I'm ordering this, this, and this on the Tyranid, and it just spits out exactly that way. So you have a Termagant fully formed, ready to shoot and go. And of course, you can also see as time progresses and modeling technology changes and materials change, you can see how much bigger the Tyranid models get over time. I mean, it's had a 26-year run, so it's kind of fascinating to see its complete timeline. So one of the big aspects of Tyranids is their adaptation, their ability to adapt to nearly every situation. A few issues back, there was an article talking about Tyranids invading a specific planet and the Tyranids who were there dying after a few days. But when the reinforcements came a few days later from space, those Tyranids had no problem in the atmosphere. So they're always adapting to the environment, they're adapting to the weapons. They're just, the new ones that come out always have some specialized ability to fight their specific foe. And one of the things that I did always kind of find odd is the idea of like organic guns, because they shoot. I mean, Tyranids have a lot of guns and shoot a lot of things, but they're all like organically made. So I didn't know like what your thoughts were on it, like whether or not it made sense for them to be able to shoot at the same level of a bolt gun or a plasma gun or a melt-a-gun. I mean, they've got some pretty hard-hitting weapons, so does that make sense biologically? I mean, based on the adaptation thing, they can, I guess, kind of adapt to do anything, but I don't know, like, it totally makes sense with, like, physical sides and claws and wings. I mean, I can be on board for all of that. It just seems like the projectiles are kind of odd, because even when they're made, the weapons are actually separate of their body, but they're melded when they're born, I guess. So the weapons are still like separate things, but everything's organic. I don't know. It seems odd. I always felt like Tyranids, especially playing like Space Hulk back in the day with the Gene Stealers, which weren't even originally part of the Tyranids, by the way, in the like early edition of Space Hulk. It always seemed odd to have ranged weapons for them, but eh. And a lot of times when you look at Tyranids, you think of bugs or some sort of insect-like aspect to them, and the Astra Militarum, of course, refers to them as bugs. But the Tyranids actually take design ideas from a lot of different places, like wolves and falcons and bats and just all kinds of different things, including humans. So the elements that go into making a Tyranid really kind of run the gamut, although we can still refer to them all as bugs. It's fine. There's also a section that talks about the heat sinks that Tyranids have. So the creatures that are the Tyranids generate a lot of heat, especially depending on their size. So the bigger they are, the hotter they get. And so it shows how they are designed to incorporate various heat sinks, either on the weapons in the case of a little Termagant, or in the case of like a Psychophage or a Zoanthrope, you've got all these big chimney-like structures on them that are all designed to dissipate the massive amounts of heat that are generated by Tyranids. Then several examples in here of how their skin is different, how their chitinous carapace is shaped differently, the very vast amount of weapons that they have access to, and how they're all designed. It's an incredibly in-depth article, so if you are a Tyranid fan, I think you'll enjoy this one. The next article in here is called Industrial Evolution, and these are different, transmissions from all over the galaxy talking about what is going on with their technology. Things are becoming corrupted, and there's like these seemingly chaotic tendrils seeping in and corrupting, whole ships or, armor or anything technological. And this is basically a precursor for, I think, the coming of Vashtor, who was actually revealed as a model last year at the 2022 Grand Narrative. So it looks like he's finally getting incorporated into more of the lore stuff, so I could definitely see 2024 having more missions, or, like Arcs of Omen, more of a mission tournament pack based on dealing with Vashtor. Next, we have an Army Gallery spotlight on some Space Marine Lamenters. They are a successor chapter to Blood Angels and are apparently known for their absolutely poor luck. I think I can relate to these guys. So the whole concept is they have this cursed founding. As soon as they were, created as a whole successor chapter, they were basically getting obliterated on completely unreasonable battlefronts, but they have persevered. And so Chris Lewis paints up some really beautiful, they're all yellow except they've got this cool checker pattern on their pauldron and a heart. It's a fun little chapter icon, a little bleeding heart, Space Marines. Then it's followed up by a showcase diorama. Several beautiful dioramas are in here. Necrons, you've got Nagash sitting at his throne being presented a book by some elves, I believe. You've got the dwarves inside their mines. They're all really, really cool. Total Mad Max style diorama in here with orcs being chased on a, I presume, Necromunda board. But you can see the smoke plumes that have been made from wool cotton balls or cotton wool balls. Either way, it works beautifully, and they're just really cool. They're very inspiring they're just inspiring, right? Dioramas are super cool. You paint a beautiful model and that's that. And they're always wonderful, right? But being able to put them into a diorama and put them in their own world, even when you have really, really pretty terrain, it kind of acts like that, right? That's where you can totally imagine this scenario unfolding in universe. Next up, we have a Necromunda article that continues the whole Sindrak burning, campaign. And so they tell another snippet of a story and give you some mission rules for being able to take Ash Gate 17. And part of that battle takes place on the road before you reach your destination, and then a normal battle unfolds from there. And one of my favorite articles, again, a Black Library segment. This is called Mother of Invention, and it takes place in the Akitian city of Eldfell. And there is a carnival about to happen in this city. So Eldfell has been taken by, I believe, Sigmarites, who have kind of reclaimed that land from the people who are there. So it's an occupation of sorts, or, a liberation, depending on whose side you're on. And a carnival is being observed because that's what the peoples have always observed. But it's being used, of course, as a subterfuge for more nefarious purposes. And these are always so fun to read. I think you learn a lot about storytelling reading these small vignettes. And because this is the last issue of White Dwarf for the whole year of 2023, there isn't really, I mean, they give you the cutout for the Warhammer bingo, but we're going to be starting the new year in 2024, so there's a little bit of chatter of what we might be seeing for the 2024 bingo. Definitely going to be a lot of playing games type of bingo boxes on there, I guess, from the sound of it, and trying a lot of different games because of course there are so many to try. So that seems to be a bit of what they're talking about here. And that is it for White Dwarf issue 495 and the last issue for 2023. Did you have a favorite article in here? Of course, I've always enjoyed the lore building, world building stuff in there. It's the languages and how magic works. And of course, like the little black library snippets, I just love them. And then of course, always basic training, although I play Astra Militarum, and when am I gonna be charging? Anyway. I appreciate you all also for putting up with my under the weather voice during this whole thing. I am trying to get this video out in a timely fashion, and nothing has been cooperating, but here it is anyway. So if you made it this far, know that I do appreciate you. But until then, I hope to see you next time for another White Dwarf review or whatever else I do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all those fun things if you haven't already. And yeah, have a wonderful new year. We'll see you next time.